Greetings, friends and fellow travelers, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach. And today, I'm going to ask you a question. Or actually, I'm going to make a statement, because I decided I'm not going to ask a question just now. But no matter who you are or what you are here to do, one thing is pretty certain. You are on a life journey that is unique to you. No one else will experience exactly the same things that you experience, and certainly not in the same way. And furthermore, no one else will learn the lessons that you learn in the way that you learn them. And no one else will have the same gifts that you have or share them in the way that you do. That's pretty damn amazing, isn't it? But here's something else that you may not have thought about. During your journey, you all of us, I think, encounter situations and conditions that sometimes cause us pain, maybe even severe pain or trauma. And a big part of that journey is to look at how do we deal with that situation and how do we heal from whatever pain or trauma that comes up in our life. So today, we're going to talk about this idea of the healer's journey. And to help me do that, I've invited a healer and transformational coach to share her wisdom on the subject. Now, my guest is an intuitive and empath who has been studying herself and others for years. She is a Reiki master teacher, a quantum healing practitioner, and an emotion code certified practitioner. And not only that, but right now she's offering a special deal for an insight session that you can find on her website at thehealingspaceco.com. And I'll tell you more about that later. But please welcome the lovely Raelin Saindon to our show. Good morning, Raelin, and thank you so much for being here. I'm just delighted to have you.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Well, you're so welcome. Now, there's one thing I noticed on your resume that I'm a little bit fascinated about. I find it fascinating, and I don't think I can pronounce it properly, but I'm going to give it a shot. You are a certified Ho'oponopono practitioner. Am I right? Did I get that right?
Yes, it's Ho'oponopono.
And what is that,
yes.
and what does it mean?
Oh, thank you for asking about that. I'll tell you, it really was a pivotal moment for me, and it was a transformational moment for me in my own healing journey. So Ho'oponopono is the ancient Hawaiian art of reconciliation. The kahuna of the village, that's their village shaman, their village medicine man or woman, as it were, an elder of the village would bring the community together if there was an upset involving an individual or involving a group of individuals or two individuals. It didn't matter. The upset impacted and affected the entire community. So the community was brought together, and then each person in the community had their moment of say regarding the upset from their perspective, from their situation of awareness, as it were. And then they were all invited to send it love, to ask for forgiveness, to apologize, and then to give gratitude for it. And the matter was done. And so that's what Ho'oponopono does, is it allows and enables us to witness those moments of upset that occur within us privately or within situations involving individuals. And we recognize and realize that there is 100% responsibility in every exchange on my part, on your part, on the part of other people, of the viewers watching, etc. And so it's really taking ownership of that and your role in it, and sending it with love, gratitude, forgiveness, and apology. It's transformative.
Right. Love, gratitude, forgiveness, and apology.
Yes.
Those sound like key ingredients for healing to me.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The state.
And so how did you, what was it that brought you onto this path to become a healer per se?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'll try to give you the skinny version of that.
Yeah.
So you were talking at the top of the show about, experiences that we go through are all unique to us. And some of us have even gone through situations of great trauma. My background when I was a child, my childhood was had the running themes of neglect, abandonment, rejection, mental, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And so it was really in that world, in that framework of trying to navigate, just trying to survive, right, amongst these adults in my life that were filled with tremendous pain of their own, from their own imprints of abuse and that sort of thing as well. So, when we're wounded, we wound other people until we start to heal. And so it was really those observations of those events in my own life and the people in my world that created this spark and this drive within me to take what I went through and what I experienced, to allow love to shift that within me, and then to be able to serve people and to help them navigate their own journeys of trauma, wounding, whatever. Just like you've said, none of us get out of this human experience without some of those battle wounds, the scars, et cetera. Some are deeper than others. But there is no comparison of trauma. There is no comparison of pain. Pain is pain is pain. And we have options of wallowing in it, continuing to wound the people that come behind it or come right behind us, or to shift that and make those changes and to become a part of the solution and offer healing. And so that's what my soul has led me to do. And I take it very seriously. It's very sacred work, sacred ground that we walk on. You and I have talked about that several times. Mm-hmm. And it's an honor and a blessing to be able to hold that space for people.
Right. So thank you for that. And that's a beautiful intro and helps us to understand more about where you're coming from. One of the things that you said that I just want to bring back some attention to, and I think this is a really, really important thing, actually. There's no comparing pain. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. My pain is my pain. And even though it may not be the same as yours, and from the outside, it may look like your trauma was more serious than my trauma, that's completely beside the point. What I feel is my pain, and what I'm reacting to is my pain. And the same thing for you. So really, it's a question of each of us individually dealing with whatever pain comes up in our lives and finding a way to heal that pain. Mm-hmm. And then I think also, and you probably alluded to this in your discussion, having learned how to heal my own pain, then I can bring some of what I learned into other people's lives and help them to heal their pain as well, which is what I think you've been doing.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And, I also know and recognize that there is a high calling and high worth. When we learn better, we do better. As Maya Angelou shared with us, that blessed soul. And we are then, it is my belief, we are then called to service of other people. Like you've said, their pain is their pain, my pain is my pain. Our stories are unique, but the threads and the themes that are woven through our stories have commonality. And so in that, we can find that place of empathy, right? And we can find those areas of even sympathy, and just taking that awareness of imagining from my perspective what that would feel like, what that would be like to experience that, has been tremendous and has enabled me to really be able to hold space for other people in a way that, regardless of if I've had that exact experience that they have, they feel seen, heard, and witnessed and valued in that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really important stuff for sure. One of the things that I've noticed about our society, Western society, and particularly for men, it's the idea that, all right, buddy, take it on the chin, buck up, don't be a pussy. How often do we hear stuff like that directed at men who, if they dare to show their pain in any way, they're ostracized, they're shunned, they're punished. Now, the same happens to women, too. It just happens in a different way. The reason I'm bringing this up for men is because I see a lot of women doing this very deep work. And what I want to see is more men coming into this fold. And I want them to feel like it's safe for them to be able to express pain rather than to keep stuffing it. I think the stuffing it is what's causing so much problem in the world. So, what do you think about that? I think that if we keep stuffing, then what we're doing is creating even more pain for ourselves, which causes us then to show up in a definitely less than ideal way and have a negative impact on all the world around us. So there's a real need to heal. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh, I have chills right now. It's a powerful topic. Bessel van der Kolk, who is a wonderful psychologist and researcher and in the forefront of trauma and studying its effects and impact and really educating people about that. He speaks about suppression. And when the body suppresses, right, when we stuff down those emotions are energy in motion. And when they're stuffed and suppressed, they come out in explosive ways, and they will always come out. It is a natural coping mechanism when we're in the midst of those upsetting situations in order to survive, to get through it, right? To just kind of choke it down or whatever. But they do come up. And I think that our current society, particularly with men, we're seeing the effects of it. I mean, the news, it's all over the place. These mass shootings, unfortunately, are predominantly male-based, and they are very angry individuals. This latest one, was an individual who got fired from a job, and he just went on a rampage. And so we're seeing those messages of don't be a sissy, don't be a pussy, the gender kind of based conditioning of what real men look like and how they're supposed to behave and act in the world versus feminine roles. You and I, we love the shadow work, of Carl Gustav Jung, and he speaks of the animus in the male and the anima in the female, right? And he talks to those shadows, and it's really important for us to begin to raise up children who are allowed to freely express the normal range of human emotion. But it begins with us, the adults in their world, and it begins with our own healing. And it begins then with our self-reflection and going inward and allowing ourselves to have these emotions in whatever way they come forward, and enabling them to be seen and heard and witnessed. Part of my journey took me toward therapy, but for years and years, I dealt with it on my own, and I didn't deal with it in a great way. I had the effects of PTSD, from what I went through, and some of that bled onto my children. Fortunately, in each of those moments, I was able to apologize, and I sought forgiveness and that sort of thing. But, it still has an impact. So I think it's very important that we begin to see the impact and the effects that our Western culture, our American culture and society, with the rugged, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and we're very individualistic, is not working very well for us.
No, I agree with you there. I've got a couple of comments here that I wanted to point out. First of all, Alan, thank you so much for your comments. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're able to join us. and I appreciate that you're finding this useful. I see Heather also has a wonderful comment here. Trauma hits us all at a soul level. Healing begins with trauma awareness, not the story surrounding it. I think that is so amazingly true and so amazingly powerful. We have all kinds of stories about our trauma, and we tend to live in those stories. As long as we keep living in those stories, we're never going to heal the issue. So we have to get underneath the story, down to the actual pain, down to the wound. We have to do our healing from that level. So thank you, Heather, for that. And what do you have to say about that, Raelin?
You know, for years, I did minimize and kind of downplayed a lot of the things that happened to me. And of course, as we know, as we were just talking about, emotions are energy in motion, and they start to rise and bubble to the surface. And it can become something that they just keep coming up, and it's because they're communicating to us. So when I was finally forced to get still, and usually what happens is life has a way of kicking us in the teeth, right? I was going through a divorce. Yeah, my world was falling down around me, essentially. The stability of my life, the stability of my children, watching that play out in them, finally was the wake-up call that I needed to really take a look at and be comfortable in sitting in silence and really owning what happened to me. And Heather is absolutely right in that it took me finally holding that awareness and that space for myself to really allow my mind to go there on what happened, the facts of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do create those stories and we manufacture those. And I wasn't in that space yet. I had to start at the bottom and really allow those emotions and the truth of what happened to me to come forward. Right. And it was through that then I was able then to look at the stories I was creating around it and really examine the stories. And
what's really interesting here, just as you're talking, it's just something hit me, and I got to say it.
Yeah.
The story that we make up is what leads us into these, what we call compensatory behaviors and strategies and coping mechanisms and so forth.
Yes.
That we think are going to keep us safe and keep us from experiencing whatever pain we imagine is going to come from, relieving ourselves. Mm-hmm. The problem with those stories is as we get attached to them in our ego minds, we tend to believe them. Yes. And when we believe them, then we look for evidence to continue to support them and to make them more true in our lives.
Yes.
This is a common behavior. Now, the problem is, as long as that story is active, as long as that story still has a magnetic pull, shall we say, then I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to go in and look at my wounds. And the reason is, I have a belief when I listen to those stories that if I were to reveal any of this stuff underneath, then you're going to hate me. Yeah. You're going to run away from me. Somehow this stuff that I have inside, if it comes out, it's going to hurt you and it's going to hurt everybody else. So in a sense, this mechanism is a way to keep me safe and to try and keep you safe as well. Even though it turns out there's really nothing to keep anybody safe from.
Right.
That part is where the illusion is. Now, in my own deep shadow work, what I discovered was when I finally did go into a space where I could release all that dark energy, I opened myself up in a way that I had never been open before. And it was like the most cathartic, explosive release I could imagine. But it was done in a very safe and powerful container with people who were present, who knew what they were doing, and they knew how to contain that energy so that it wouldn't do any damage. Well, after I got underneath all the rage and the anger and the shame, then I got down to that deep sorrow. And when I got down to that deep sorrow, I was able to connect to a very, very hurt part of myself and understand where this pain was coming from. But the magic part of this was people did not run screaming for the hills when they saw me doing my work. As a matter of fact, they did the exact opposite. And that stunned me. That made me realize, I have been doing the exact wrong thing all these years, trying to hide this energy, when in fact, by revealing it, I created a closeness with people that I couldn't possibly have imagined.
Right.
So the healing for me was immense. I got rid of like 95% of the rage and anger that had been building up inside me. But there was also a healing for other people who witnessed that, because they then realized that they could do the same thing.
Yes.
That's the beauty of it.
Yes.
When we are brave enough to look into ourselves, we give other people permission to be brave to do their work too.
Yes. Well, we are connective and connectivist and collective individuals, right? We are spiritual beings having a human journey, and spirit is interconnected. Spirit is not, we have the illusion in our human experience right now that I am separate from you.
Right.
Right? You're over there, you're in Idaho, is it?
Yes.
I'm here in Arizona. So from time, distance, and space, right, there is that quote unquote reality, and that I'm separate from you and I'm separate from, the person next to me, et cetera, et cetera. But in all honesty, we are all connected and collective energy together. Now, that sounds a little woo-woo, but I'm getting somewhere. So as you were saying, one of the great lies of our egoic mind, which is really has a valuable purpose. Please hear us when we say we are not promoting that the ego mind go away, or that we just write it off and we deny it and, put it off on the shelf and it becomes, this monk here, right? We're not disconnecting from it. It's there for a reason and a purpose. We are holistic beings, and every single part of us has a function and a material mechanic, okay? But the egoic mind tells us these stories in order for us to survive in that moment. Now, and in that, we can create, and we often do create, our own level of pain and suffering surrounding a specific event. In that event that happened to me, the stories that I told was that I didn't have a family of origin that really loved me. I didn't really belong to that family. I should have been born, or my mother at my birth was considering giving me up for adoption. So then I told myself, well, this other family that was going to adopt me would have loved me and would have cared for me, and I would have been better off, et cetera, right? And so we start to build these walls around everything, and we fortify it, and we make it worse with the stories that we tell. Right. Because we seek meaning and interpretation in events, which is a healthy thing to do, which is absolutely why we've come here. But nobody teaches us about all of these things. But when we find that we are vulnerable, and when we go to those places like you went to, and you exposed that deep wound for yourself, that resonates, that's an energetic frequency that resonates and connects with those people that were there with you, because they have felt those same deep woundings. Whatever that uniqueness was about it, the wound was in common. And that depth of feeling separate and feeling disconnected from the other. And so then when we build these connective activities of healing, like you said, that dynamic of, I was here in Arizona, I was in therapy, and my therapist told me, and I do energy work, and my therapist told me, you're healing yourself and you're healing your family at the same time. Yep. And I still said to her, how is that possible? Mm-hmm. And she said, I have to explain energy to you. And I'm like, no, I get it. But in that moment, I was living in the wound, and I couldn't see how that was going to be possible. But I'm telling you, changes were happening within my family, and I wasn't even anywhere near them. They live in Colorado and other areas of the country. And now we have wonderful relationships, transformative relationships, but it's because I was afforded the space and gave myself the space and the gift of that to get down to that deep wound, and then to see and then as you get down to the deep wounds, you start to recognize the stories, right? And as I started recognizing the stories, then I invited in the curiosity of, well, what if my mother really she was wounded herself? I know that these things happened to my mother. I know my mother was abused. I know she went through these certain events. And I know how I felt going through it. So, oh my gosh, I can imagine how she felt going through it. So then when I could overlay my wounds on top of that and see she was just trying to cope and get herself through tough situations and survive. So then perhaps then the stories that I told about her to myself was that she didn't care about me. She never really wanted me. She wanted to give me away the moment she had me, et cetera, et cetera. I was a pain in her ass. I was, this, that, and the other, right? Right?
Yep.
Because I was a bastard child. I didn't know my real father. I met him years later, on and on and on. All of these stories, right? What if the truth is that she was simply just trying to survive herself, and she was so wounded herself that she could not see the damage that she was inflicting upon her children, and that never would be the intent of her heart. And the minute that I'm getting emotional, David.
That's okay. Perfect.
As you did in your moment too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the minute that I could entertain that, then all of those stories started to just dissolve. And that's where Ho'oponopono came in, and all of the other work that I do. And then I could really see clearly that she just literally was a person in pain as well, doing what had always been done, those patterns. And there's got to be somebody that comes along and interrupts those patterns.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I can resonate in a lot of ways around this because, I had a similar kind of dynamic with my mom. Most of my rage and anger that built up over the years was actually directed at her. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I got rid of it that I was able to go back and see my mother for the human being that she was, for the spiritual being that she was, having a human experience, and that she was just doing the best she could with the tools that she had at her disposal based on the experiences that she had. Yeah. I was then able to forgive her, even though she had already died. She had already passed on. Now, the beauty of that is now I can look back at that whole journey and I can understand that things that she did, either if I imagine that I was a victim, even the things that she did to me, she actually did for me. Not so much because she thought, maybe she wasn't even aware of this, but I'm sure on a spiritual level, she and I had made some kind of an agreement before we both came here that I was supposed to have some kind of an experience. And the way that I was going to have that experience, we didn't know for sure what the details were, perhaps, but she devised her own plan to help me have the experience that I was supposed to have.
Yes.
Now that, to me, is amazing. Now, there are people out there who are logical thinkers, who are linear thinkers, who would say, oh, that's just bullshit. That's just not true at all. And okay, I respect your opinion, but I believe it, even though it defies my own logic.
Right.
So I think that, maybe your mother had similar plan. Maybe you and she had some kind of a similar plan before either of you were born. That said, hey, I need to experience something so that I can find out what it's like to be a healer.
Yeah.
And your mother came up with her own ideas in her own way and said, this is what you need.
100%. And you know what the gift of that is? Well, so I'm doing research on this topic of archetypes, right? And you and I, we share this love of shadow work and inner child stuff. And I'll be at Soul Tree presenting on this topic, but in Carolyn Mays's book, Sacred Contract, she talks about this very dynamic, this very real dynamic that we each enter into these contracts with other souls and play these roles. You know, Shakespeare talked about the roles that a man plays within his life, you know, and each on the world stage, right? And each is a character and all of this stuff, right? So these roles are so important that we play for other people. And if we recognize and realize that other individuals are just mirrors of what's going on inside of us and what's happening in our world. And so I played the victim role for a very long time. Well, what was I? I was a victim of circumstance. I was a victim of abandonment. I was a victim of rejection. I was a victim of abuse. I was a victim of, you know, on and on and on, right? And so I played that victim consciousness role very, very easily in my life. And it afforded me that survival instinct of avoiding responsibility and of always being dependent on somebody else, because it gained me, I felt like it gained me sympathy, gained me attention in that way. You know, look at poor little, my name back then was Tanya. Look at poor little Tanya. Look at all the things that have happened to her. Oh, it's terrible, you know, feel sorry for her, right? And so we get into these mindsets, these archetypes, these origins of imprint that are spoken into our life, either through circumstance or other people. And when we find ourselves so uncomfortable with what is going on, that is when the real work of healing can begin. That is when I get excited when I see clients saying, but you don't understand that this, and this, and this, and this has all happened to me. That is the point that I get extremely excited, because they have that awareness. Then we can shift their awareness into, it's actually happened for you, and let me show you how. Mm-hmm. And they are true gifts. And, you know, you mentioned forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for the other individual. Forgiveness is for ourselves.
Absolutely. Right? Yep. That's the big confusion that a lot of people have about forgiveness. Yeah. And therefore, it makes no sense to ask for forgiveness, because I'm not asking for it for me. I'm asking for it for you. You know, you need to come to your own forgiveness in your own way. And that's the only way you can release yourself from your own pain. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful, powerful force. That's what I've been teaching for years. Yeah. You know, you've been talking a lot about stuff here that we've been kind of bouncing around, and I want to just kind of refocus a little bit. We have this question, you know, of relationship of ourselves to other people and to other spiritual beings. We've talked about how maybe we make a contract with, or an agreement, if you like, with spiritual beings before we even manifest in the real world. Now, that doesn't mean, I don't think, that all of these spiritual beings are going to show up in the real world with us. Some of them will, and some of them are going to stay behind and maybe support us from the other side of this physical duality that we have. That part really excites me. I think that's where the energy of angels comes into being. Yes. You know, these people who are there to guide us and help us. So, you know, the problem is, as I said, our ego minds kind of create this sense of separation. And you talked about it a little bit too. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, when we understand that we are in relationship with other people, then we can begin to feel that sense of connection and oneness that, I mean, it's always there. It never goes away. It's only the ego mind that continues to build that sense of separation and builds up those, you know, the walls, the fortresses to try and keep us protected and safe.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting that you bring this up. I was just, again, doing research for my talk, and the poem by John Donne, No Man is an Island, and he speaks about not asking for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. He's talking about the connectedness of what happens to this individual over here is also happening to me. This is the message of Ho'oponopono. It's the message of the healing modalities that I have been so blessed to be able to work with, is that nothing is happening in a vacuum. You know, what happened to you, David, all of those years ago brought you to where you are, brought you to Sedona in April, and all of the experiences that I went through brought me to Sedona in April, and brought the two of us together, brought us here so that we can have this healing conversation, so that we can speak to the people who are watching, and it's preparing them for their healing journey as well. So,
yeah, beautiful.
You know, and Emotion Code talks about it. Bessel van der Kolk talks about it in The Body Keeps Score. Mark Wolin talks about it in It Didn't Start With You. I can't remember the founder's name of Family Constellation. They all speak about the generational trauma, right? Ancestral stuff that's handed down. For those of you that are familiar with biblical scriptures, God talks about the sins of the father being handed down and visited upon the sons and the daughters to the seventh and onward generations. And that's that dynamic of the decisions that we make in any one given moment have real world impact on other people. It's that ripple in a pond, dynamic, right?
Absolutely.
And, we could talk about the butterfly effect. If a butterfly across the world, right, is flapping its wings, how does it impact weather? How does it impact, the lioness that's there, going after its prey? How does that impact then, the gazelle that's running off and right, and on and on and on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we have to, I believe that our collective life experiences are all pointing and communicating to us toward this healing journey in order to remember and to realign with who we are spiritually, and that is we are a soul having a human experience. And once we connect with that, then we can begin to create that room to see, like you were saying, where these people in our lives, these situations and circumstances in our lives really are communicating love, communicating forgiveness, communicating power, communicating empowerment, and communicating service to others, so that we can all join together and recognize that we are of each other. What happens to these immigrants who are coming and being disbanded and ripped from their families has an impact on me, has an impact on you. The terroristic threats, around the world has an impact on me, has an impact on you. And what I'm doing here, what you're doing here in your space with Life Mastery has an impact on all of that as well.
Of course. Yeah. No, you've hit some great points here, and I'm just sitting here resonating, thinking, wow, she's channeling me. We are the same. I swear we have same wavelength, and
we do.
So it's hard to come up with discussion points because I agree with everything you're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I wanted to mention was this notion of boundaries. I think boundaries, on one hand, as spiritual beings, we are boundless. We have no boundaries. We are completely open to, whatever is going on. But in the physical world, we do experience the notion of boundaries. Right. And I think that from the physical perspective, we do have to be prepared to honor boundaries, Right. And all of the people that we come into contact with are not at the same level of enlightenment. And right. Some of them may be okay with, me crossing a boundary, but some of them won't. Mm-hmm. So I have to be alert and aware and maybe a little bit careful. I have to notice if I have gone a little bit too far in a boundary situation, then I have to, whoa, all right, didn't mean to do that. I didn't realize I was crossing your boundary. On the other hand, as a person who's living in a physical world, it's my responsibility to express my boundaries to you. So we do have to find that fine line, I suppose, between being boundless and having boundaries.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I think that comes from, particularly when we're on this side of the fence, right? You talked about having more, a deeper conscious awareness of our connectivity, right? So having that, then we can understand and see and realize those individuals that don't share that same experience aren't in that same area and arena. And again, I think it comes back to the noticing and the understanding that each person is called into their own journey, having their own unique experiences, and it's not up to me to interrupt that. The term even of being a healer is a beautiful term. Okay. And it sounds very etheric and it sounds wonderful and angelic and very, giving and all of that. But for me, I think it doesn't go deep enough because I am not healing other people. They heal themselves.
Absolutely.
Right? We hold the space for that, right?
Right. And not only hold the space, but help them to find the space for healing.
Yes, 100%. So I call myself a guide, I guess.
Yeah.
But people understand words, right? But I'm very particular about the meaning of those words, and I think that it's important for us then. So with boundaries, so we're having this human experience. If we are disconnected from our spirituality, then we are rooted in unawareness, right? We're separated from the fullness of who we are, etc., and we're not tapped into the divine source and all of that working through us. If we are too connected with our spirituality, and we're not rooted in our humanity, then we're ethereal and we're up here and people call us woo-woo and we're very, disconnected from human experience and everything is wonderful and beautiful. And that's spiritual bypassing, right?
Exactly.
So
I did an episode on that a little weeks ago.
It's huge, yes. So we've got to marry these two together. Boundaries, I believe, is a tool that helps us to recognize and realize that we are having a human experience, that we understand that my experience is not going to be your experience and what you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I'm at a different level, or I'm not comfortable with what you're comfortable with, or whatever. So it's a respecting of one another's unique human journey being played out in real time in front of us. And while still holding that space through respect and mutual love and connected awareness.
Yeah, that's great.
The individual and where they are.
Right. And I want to add one more thing about that. Boundaries are shifting. They're constantly moving. Mm-hmm. And so while I may have a very strong boundary about something right now in this moment, 5 minutes from now, I might be completely open. Or 10 minutes or an hour or whatever. We all shift and move and change, and depending on our moods, depending on energy that's flowing within us, all that stuff. Yes. Very, very important. So thank you for bringing that. By the way, I see Heather has asked a question. I just want to bring this out, make sure we address it. The idea of the observer mode in the healer. Now, I think you've already been talking about this, maybe not directly focusing on that topic. But as someone who guides people to healing, you have to be an observer. You have to be fully aware of what's going on. What do you say about that?
Wow. Oh, another great topic. when you hold space for someone else, so we understand things through contrasts, right? So, and very often our mind understands things through what not to do, and going through situations that informed us of, okay, yeah, this sucked. This was really horrible, and let's not repeat that. So when you're holding space for someone or for yourself, giving yourself the freedom to express whatever it is that's coming forward, however it comes forward. For example, I am in a writing group, and there's an assignment that we're doing this week, and it has brought up some emotional stuff for me. And so yesterday was difficult. I finally completed a portion of it, and then the emotions came. And so for me, the release was in crying. So in that moment, I allowed myself to cry, but there's that part of me, that spiritual part of me, my soul, that observes that and holds space for that. And then I get curious, and I start to ask myself the questions, okay, what is it about this situation that I'm crying about? I'm not back there as a child. I'm not in that moment again. I'm here, I'm safe, I'm on my couch. So what came forward for me was just the understanding and the pure love that I held and had for that child self of mine, Tanya, in that moment, for the gift of teaching and healing that she gives to me continually, and how she has brought me to this moment of awareness, and I can examine a new layer. So it's giving ourselves that opportunity of curiosity, checking in with our body, checking in with our physical sensations that come forward, asking ourselves, where am I feeling it in the body? If I'm feeling it in my stomach, okay, why am I feeling it in my stomach? And then asking ourselves these questions of curiosity enables us to become then an observer of what's coming forward for us. A wonderful thing I like to do, and I offer it to clients, is to then take those moments of awareness, of observational awareness, and journal on those.
Yeah.
Write down where you're feeling it in your body. Don't edit what you're writing, and just allow that stream of consciousness to flow, because your subconscious mind is communicating, and it will always bring forward the answers that you're needing.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you mentioned, I don't know, an hour ago, 2 days ago, whenever it was, we've been going for a while here.
Yes.
The idea that, I believe you said that your therapist mentioned to you that as you heal yourself, you're healing your family.
Yeah.
And I think that was I didn't want to let that pass. Because it's a beautiful statement, and it's something that I think that people can know about, that as you heal yourself, what happens is, I think you learn to uncover, illuminate, and heal the wounds that have haunted you since your childhood.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, you automatically begin the process of self-love and self-acceptance. Right. And that helps you to connect into self-compassion and self-forgiveness, which in turn brings more and more healing to yourself. Just the very fact that you are healing yourself means that you're showing up in a more holistic and generous and loving and compassionate and forgiving way. Yes. And that cannot help but heal the planet.
Well, the highest energy vibration of any emotion is love, right? So love, everything is energy. You can feel it. When somebody walks into a room and they're radiating love, or they're radiating confidence, right? Or they're just radiating pure joy, people's heads start to turn, and people start to notice that, and they're like excited, and this is going to be fantastic. Conversely, through the contrast, if you walk into a room and you're freaking pissed off, and you just had an argument, right, with your best friend or with your husband or your kids, and you're frazzled and you're chaotic, you come into a room with that energy, everybody is going to start to feel it. We're vibrational beings.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
pick up on people's vibes. We get it. And you can know, you have a sensory awareness of whether somebody is an open individual or they're, an angry, closed and tight individual. So as we are in these acts of self-forgiveness and self-compassion and observation and reflection, right? And we're doing that work, like you said, we're going to hold our space differently. We're going to respond to things rather than react to things. And we're going to then just radiate out this loving acceptance of others in our world. They'll start to notice it.
Yeah. Fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah. It's an important conversation, man. We could do this all day, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, I want to just say this has been another fabulous episode of Life Mastery TV. And I just want to thank you so much, Raelin, for joining me today and sharing your amazing wisdom with all of us. It's just been a real pleasure.
Thank you. You too. Honor for me.
Yeah. So, folks, I want to thank you all for watching this program today and for being with us. I want to remind you that Raelin has a special gift offering on her website at The Healing Space Co. That's thehealingspaceco.com. And you can find out about her Insight program available there. Meanwhile, I want to remind you that you can watch the recordings of this and all other previous Life Mastery TV shows by going to my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. And please remember to practice the Life Mastery mantra. I've shared this with you before, and I'm going to share it every time because I think it's important. And it goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. Until we meet again, I am David McLeod, your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your journey. See you next time.